Welcome to my first LinkedIn Live event. Going to give a little time for everybody to join. I get to see who's viewing, at least not by name, but I get to see total viewers. And this event, of course, is about developing curiosity and changing the idea about bidding. And bidding is a part of our sales life. There's no doubt about it. But we can always choose bidding, like choosing the lowest price, hopefully. We have a dialogue. We have a different communication with people. We challenge people. We plant our feet a little bit and we're curious. Why bidding? Has bidding worked for people? We all know stories of what happened with the lowest bidder. I remember a high school in the town I lived in Rocky Hill, Connecticut. There was a big clamor for the lowest bidder. And it was government, it was federal government money, and that's what was driving it. And so what happened was they took the lowest bidder. 10 years later, the school was empty. 10 years later, in new construction, the school was empty. And they threw out that whole process. They actually had to demolish that school. They couldn't even find another use for it because there were so many problems. So the thing about bidding is that we can always take that low risk course and ask, can I get on your bid list? Which to me has always been a crazy question. So I have a few stories about bidding, and then I'll ask some of the questions that I ask people now, either if they're a client and they're bidding work and I ask them about it, or they've got a sales team and their sales team is bidding work. If you're not having the following conversation that we're going to talk about, then you won't ever have anything new, right? No risk, no reward. And at the end of the conversation that I'm about to propose, you can say, hey, listen, I'm thankful for the opportunity to bid. If this idea is not a fit for you, it's fine. We'll continue to participate. So here are some of the stories that I have first. I called on a big university with a salesperson who had made the appointment. And we had tried for years, I guess, before I got to that location. And it was a company my company acquired, so they asked me to move. So one of the targets in my mind when I got to that particular state, Massachusetts, I said, I'm going to get into Harvard. And there was a large real estate company at the time. It was called Spalding and Sly. People said to me, I mentioned it to a few people, that's a mistake we'll talk about later. But they said, you're crazy. You're not one of the good old boys. You'll never get in. It's all Boston people. It's all local people in both of those targets. But to me, they were good targets based on our experience. And not all of our universities and real estate companies were bidders. They had partnered with us. And that's what I'm going to talk about. So long story short, we get to the appointment. And the person in charge of the project said, thank you for coming in. I just want to let you know that we can't award you the business. It's not going to happen. I'm going to shut my phone down, folks, so that we don't hear the buzzing. So long story short, I said, well, since we're not going to win the bid, would you tell me, and that you won't consider us, why did you invite us in? She said, I've got 17 suppliers. I think the number was 16, but don't hold me to it. 16 suppliers. We're going to go to one. And some of them we've done business with for 35 years. I said, you know what? That makes sense to me. I'm not sure I would award a bid to us. You don't know who we are. I said, why are you bidding? And I said, would you mind telling me the story? And she said, no, I don't mind. And she told me they had competition from outside sources at the university. The president of the university had instructed all the deans of the different schools to get pricing on facilities management services. And that was her department. They were using the university employees. And it was always a university employee realm. They had never used outside suppliers. So now she had competition. And so telling me that story, and she spent maybe 40, 45 minutes telling me, and I said, now, why did you invite us here since this is the current situation? She said, well, we heard things about you. I was intrigued. What did you hear? She said, I heard both good and bad. I said, give me the bad first. And she did. And I said, well, some of that's true. Some of it's not. why do you think it's not? She said, well, they're your competition is where I got the information. I said, well, thank you for not believing it all. And I said, what about the good? And she told me the good. And I said, where'd you hear that? She said, some of our manufacturers that call on us mentioned you're a distributor for their product. And I said, well, some of the good is true, certainly. And again, not all of it is. We make mistakes. We're not perfect. And I said, do you mind if I suggest just one thing? She said, what's that? I said, I think you need a partnership. You need a partnership to help you with this competitive environment that you're thrown into. And we sell some of the people that you've mentioned that are being invited to bid on facility services. So I said, I wouldn't mind helping you with that. And let me know if you need it. She said, well, tell me more about it. I said, are you bringing in all these people that are currently your suppliers? I said, what's the process? She said, yeah, we're going to bring in all 16. They're going to show us what they could do, tell us what they could do better, educate us as much as they can, and then we'll make a decision. I said, well, if you don't hear the word partnership from anyone, and I said, I can't imagine you wouldn't, you get 16 people coming in, then call me. I'll help you with it. It wasn't 2 weeks or 3 weeks, and I got a phone call from her. And I said, wait a minute, before you ask me, she said, hello, Steve. I said, before you ask me, would you tell me, did you hear partnership from anybody? She said, no. I said, what did you hear? And of course, she told me all the stories about salespeople, how good they were, how great they were. They had product demonstrations arranged. They had a tour of their facility, and they were touting how good they could be, how good they were, and how they could help the university. They didn't talk about where they had problems and challenges. She said, would you come in now and tell me about your partnership idea? And I said, yes, would you do me a favor? I said, would you add me to the list of your 16 current suppliers, even though it's pretty outrageous. I don't expect we'll ever get awarded this, but I'd like to be number 17. She said, yes. Long story short, we left with the business about 2 months later, and it did require some work, but she narrowed it down to 9 and then 3. There was a little process in between, which doesn't apply here, but a few suppliers shot themselves in the foot. I'll tell you that. Many of you might know what happened when I say that. And we were awarded the business. We had never done $1 with them, but we focused on partnership all the way. And we didn't officially bid all those items. And people couldn't believe it that we had won it. A few, maybe 6 months later, 5 months later, someone at a cocktail party, an event I was running for Building Owners and Managers Association in Boston, one of the premier real estate people, someone who had just been assigned to purchasing, walked up to me and said, oh, look at you from XYZ Paper Company. We could never buy from you. And he was forceful. I could feel the energy. And I turned, looked at his name tag, and I said, well, Peter, how do you know I'd sell you? And then he said, do you know who we are? Have you heard about us? Do you know how many locations we have? Do you know how much we spend? I said, Pete, let me ask you a few questions. Do you sell everybody? He said, no. I said, why not? He said, well, we don't know how they pay. We don't know if they're large enough. We don't know if they typically treat their suppliers well. Maybe they turn them over often. We want to understand things. I said, exactly. That's why I said, how do you know I'd sell you? I want to understand it. Maybe we're not a fit. See, that pulling back is an attitude that most people don't have in service businesses, in supply businesses, in distribution businesses. And I owned a distribution business, and I started in the industry in 1975. So I've been around a little while in various capacities. And then I started my own training business in 1998. So what I've learned over time is that a dialogue is so much more interesting. And even contractors and people who ask me to come in to consult on sales, I've questioned their bidding process. Why are you bidding? How much time is involved with bidding? Who's managing all these bids? Aren't there certain segments you could just develop a partnership with, have preferred partners? Maybe it's 2. Maybe it's roofing, maybe it's flooring, maybe it's painting. But instead of being the general contractor managing tons of bids with project managers, so there's a cost, they could spend time on other things like managing the projects instead of the bidding. I said, do you understand what your cost is for painting typically on a job? What's the percentage? And they all had a number for roofing, for flooring, for painting. They knew typically from history what the cost was for those services. I said, why not enroll somebody that would be a partner, or perhaps two if you feel more comfortable with two, make them preferred partners, and you share with them the details of every job, and they work to help you do a great job. They help your reputation. I said, let me ask another question. Have you had the lowest bidder or even the next lowest bidder not perform well? Yes. What happened? Well, we had to call in other people to finish the job at time and materials. We had to manage the painting companies or the flooring company or the roofing company very closely because they accepted the low bid. And the challenge is with, of course, the people that are putting out the bids, but it's also the challenge with salespeople who are coming in saying, let me get on your bid list. How do we do it? Come on, let me take your name and number. It's the easiest thing to do is to get on somebody's bid list. Having a conversation that starts like this requires management, number one, to support it, because I find management are the ones saying, get on the bid lists. What did you close lately? It's crazy thinking to drive people into that behavior, because bidding is like taking the low cost job. You can always do that. And how many of our project managers today and people that are bidding jobs are calling someone they've gotten to know and saying, where are we on that bid? Where do we need to be? Would you share that with me? Would you help me get close? What it doesn't do, though, is provide you with a good client with a healthy bottom line and make you more profitable and productive. So the conversation is like this. We always do some bids and it's not the preferred process for us. Or we're glad to do your bid and it's not our preferred process. Would you mind if I share with you our preferred process and some of our stories about it? And by the way, even if you're the first one to do it, you could say, it's the first time anybody would say yes to that. If you say yes, but do you mind the dialogue first? Most people would say, why not? Go ahead. And the ones that don't, you can A, always bid them. All right, we'll bid you. B, you could start to ask yourself, are they our ideal client? And who are your ideal clients? And your ideal client, and then your great client, and then your good client might still be bidding. But those people, you could have another conversation. You could ask them, are you interested in some ideas that'll make you more productive? Are you interested in some ideas that would free up some of your project management people to actually manage projects? Would you like to hear our preferred partner idea? And it doesn't have to just be the salespeople of service providers or supply providers. It can be a conversation that contractors start to have. And I've had that conversation with people. And the ones that have tried it, it's worked out well because maybe they didn't do the whole building project if they were a contractor, or maybe they were inviting environmental services, security, et cetera. Maybe they didn't do the whole customer base that they have and not bid, but on premier projects that they wanted to shine for perhaps a new customer, they used this process and it built their reputation because they didn't have people playing games. We all know that the low bidder finds places to cut. They don't paint every area exactly as you asked. They're not using all the material specified in the roof job or the flooring job, or they're not cleaning every area every night because they find places to cut to make it productive. Why would you want people doing that? Why are you encouraging people to do that? Instead, what I suggest to people is have a conversation with people that would push them a little bit, make them uncomfortable, and it should make you uncomfortable. Thomas Merton once said the biggest human temptation is to settle for too little. Business owners and sales teams often don't think big enough, and they don't think differently. Different thinking leads to things that sometimes work greatly. I mean, think about all the inventions. Not every invention, if you think of the electric light bulb, just happened like that because Thomas Edison had the idea. You know the story, I'm sure. Some say when he was asked about all the times he failed in making the light bulb, he said, I just learned ways not to make them. He didn't look at them as failures. So if you propose something really new, you're going to look different than other companies that are just coming in and saying, can I get on your bid list? It's the same idea for contractors. Imagine establishing a few partnerships and releasing your project managers to actually manage the project instead of managing paperwork and bids and going over blueprints by detail that painters and service providers and roofers and construction cleanup crews present to you. You got to analyze their bids to make sure they're not playing a game right on the bid. I have a story from a painting client of mine that said they lost a bid by a big number. And they even had that concerned conversation with their customer. Aren't you concerned that it's so much lower? Listen, that's how we're doing it now. And this company had been awarded other business even when they were a little bit higher because of their reputation. Needless to say, a few months later, they were asked time and materials to come fix that job. And it was more than the $80,000 they thought they saved, that the contractor thought they saved. They paid more than $80,000 to have it fixed. And how do you think they looked to their architect, their owner of the building? Probably not good. So it's always worthwhile to have a different conversation and to teach people to have a different conversation. And you won't bring it everywhere. I'm realistic about that. There will be people you won't change their mind. There'll be people probably that you'll say, I would never have that conversation with this outfit. Okay. You won't experience anything new until you take that risk, and I understand it. Here's the thing about developing sales teams that can do that for you, and even changing the mindset of a contractor, or if purchasing people are on this live event, you too could change the ideas of your company that's saying to you, hey, you got to get 3 bids, you got to get 5 bids, you got to throw out the top, throw out the bottom, go with somebody in the middle. You could propose partnerships. Hey, what if we develop a partnership with these 3 key areas where we spend 20% of our supplies are 80% of our spend? And we develop a partnership based on the targets we want to get into in terms of spend and our budget. And we also ask them for ideas about how we can be more productive, save money, and we save time in this bidding. And I could do other things with this time. I could research other projects that could save us big money if we have the time to do them. That's another conversation that even contractors and purchasers could have. And for our service providers and our supply suppliers on the phone or on the live event, you too can have that conversation, but here's how you teach it. You educate everybody on what makes your company most productive and which clients are ideal, great, and good. And you teach them to be curious by educating that not everyone is a fit for us. Not everyone's a fit. So you teach them questioning skills to look for the fit. And it's a two-way fit. You're looking to see if they're a fit for you. And they're also, as your salesperson, looking to see, help the customer buy, help them see that they're a fit, that you're a fit. And that's done by dialogue. It's not done by vomiting all over people. We're the best. We're the greatest. We've done this job, that job, this job. I can give you references and testimonials. That's not respecting a lot of people on what's called the psychometric assessment, the DISC. There's a circle of different personality types. Some people need to be presented to. I say it's fewer and fewer because people want to They want to understand if you're a fit as well. And they've done a lot of research on the internet. They already know who the top people are, or maybe they've asked other people in their industry. They belong to associations, don't they? By the way, you could hang out at where your target market hangs out and do presentations like this. Hey, we've got a few new ideas about how to approach procuring services and supplies. A preferred partnership. But first, you have to educate your people about being curious and finding the fit, and you have to take that risk. It might feel uncomfortable. Whether you're a salesperson, an owner, or a leader of sales, it's a great idea to give people that into their toolbox. Add that tool into their toolbox. So as you develop their curiosity, stop asking them, what did they close lately? And what new bid lists have you gotten onto? Or what new contractors have you asked? Can we bid for you? I hope it sounds dumb, right? Because it sounds so easy. If you study anything that's modern about today's selling, the Challenger sale, or some of the others that are out there, there's a lot of people out there. I was a licensee for the Sandler Sales Institute. They would also encourage a different dialogue so that you look different. That's what I work with people on, working different. And I want to help you do this, whether you use my services or not. That's not the point of this. I put my information out on LinkedIn to help people. And that's important for you to do as well. Get that information out there. Maybe that's how you do it. Put it out on social media, on LinkedIn. Hey, we've got a new way of doing things. We prefer helping people find a partnership with us. And we look to make them more productive. We point out ways they could improve their paint projects, their roofing projects, their flooring, their nightly cleaning, their daily security. But if you don't have that dialogue, you won't get any of those jobs. So questions are really key. How did I get those jobs? For example, that real estate company that I started to tell you about, I said, what is the reason, Pete, that you would not do business with us forever? You don't know me. He said, well, I got 9 suppliers. I said, I don't know. I know a little bit about you. I think maybe it's 10 or 11, but he said, we're going to go to 1. It was like deja vu. I said, you know what? I understand it. But I also knew something that might be a roadblock for him. And I said, there's a potential roadblock that you're going to run into trying to consolidate these suppliers. It was maintenance and janitorial and paper supplies, et cetera, all disposable supplies. I said, there's a challenge and a roadblock you might run into. Well, what's that? Again, I said, is there a process? What's your process for bringing everybody in to go to 1? And he said, exactly that. We're going to bring everybody in. We're going to visit some sites. We're going to listen to their presentations. I said, well, if none of them offer you this solution to this obstacle, I have a feeling it'll come up. Reach out to me. I'll help you. He did. He reached out to me. It was almost like deja vu. I said, Pete, you mean no one offered you a way around this obstacle? And what it was is a national manufacturer of paper products was not releasing the pricing to the people to the 4 or 5 distributors that also carried their product. They said, we have a pioneering contract with the person that brought the business in. The problem was it had bled away. And I said, you have a way to win this battle and this argument and get everyone the pricing, and I'll send you a way to do it. I'm going to send you a letter without letterhead. And I have the contact that you can call nationally at that manufacturer, and they will release the pricing. I said, I have one more thing to ask you, a favor. He said, what's that? Would you add me to that list of consideration? And you know, I said no to him 2 or 3 more times. He did put me on the list, and we did end up with the business. We weren't the lowest. And he called me in the end of that whole process and said, Steve, I got bad news. You're not the lowest. I said, okay, Pete. He said, well, you're going to be able to change anything? No. That's our process. We give you the first, best, and finest. We want to help you be more productive. And by the way, I had helped him, because when he sent me this list of things to quote on, I called him back at that point too and said, Pete, I can't do this. He said, what do you mean? I said, you got way too many suppliers, way too many manufacturers. You're not aggregating your spend so that you can get the best contract cost for people like us, people that buy the product. We can get you contract cost, but not if you don't aggregate and roll up some of these different manufacturers of the various products. He said, what would you suggest? I said, if you want, I'll redo this and I'll fax it to you. He said, yeah, would you do that? Again, on a white paper with no letterhead, I sent him what I thought he should do. And guess whose list he sent out for quotation? Mine. And we didn't go lower. And I found out later there were 2 people lower than us and 1 person about the same. And I asked him, I said, how come you didn't go with the one just below us? He said, it was close, Steve, but I didn't like the guy. Fascinating, right? People buy from people they like and trust. So have a different dialogue and you'll build a relationship called a preferred partnership, and you'll make more money. You'll help your customers be more productive and more profitable, and you'll have longer lasting relationships. Any questions? Steve@stevelentini.com. Steve@stevelentini.com. I'm glad to help.